Alright guys, welcome to episode 30, the big 3-0 of the Daily BE. And I have my good friend Sean here doing a little cinematography work. Today's topic was based off of the last episode. If you recall, I was looking at, I think it was the envelope shirt cuff. And one of my two shirts was horribly wrinkled, and I thought, well, we need to do an episode on how to iron a dress shirt. So, here we are. It's easier than you think. And admittedly, there are different methods and techniques, and everyone kind of has their own way. When I first started learning how to do this, one, I kind of had to force myself into it, and had 4 or 5 shirts, and they had to be ironed. And so, well, you're going to learn at some point. As you go through it, I think you'll kind of figure out your own certain technique, and maybe you take a few shortcuts here and there depending on your use, and that's okay. But this is my method for doing dress shirts. I think it's pretty easy, pretty quick. And I'm going to take you through it. So let's get down to it. This is a familiar shirt. If you watched the Bespoke Edge Daily BE before, this is one of my printed dress shirts. And to get right into it, so very simple iron here. Make sure you have steam in it. You'll need it. So first thing, I put it right through the front of the ironing board, right? And I start in the back. This is kind of the yoke of the shirt from there up. And I just focus on just the back of it. And that's all it really takes. You can see obviously when the wrinkles go away. And then what I do, all I'm doing is kind of moving it to one side. I'm just pulling the dress shirt away from me and working towards the front. And again, I start up on the yoke. That's that seam, which might be a little hard to see, but on your shirt you probably know where it is. And I'm just going through piece by piece. Here's kind of the side seam, and just looking at the shirt by sections. That's how I start to go through and iron it. Doesn't take too much. I'm not using a lot of steam, and I'm continuing now on the side. So here's the sleeve, the arm. And you'll get a feel, based on fabric. Some things are easier than others. This is actually a pretty easy shirt to iron. Wrinkles are coming out really easily. And I'm not really even using steam, it's just kind of the natural steam. Some shirt fabric's going to be a little bit different. The idea obviously is to just move it around until the wrinkles come out. And it's okay to go over it a couple times. So now we're coming up on the front. This is the side with the buttonholes. And with the placket here, a lot of times this will happen where on the back of the shirt, the placket will kind of fold back on itself from being washed. And so what I do is I will kind of put a finger under it here to kind of keep it flat as I go up. And that's a way for me to make sure that I'm not ironing that wrinkle right into it on the back, which can be a pain when you go to obviously button your dress shirt. So kind of doing it again, I got my hand under here to kind of keep it flat as I go up. A little bit of steam, repositioning as needed, and up at the top. And if there's one important part, it's probably right here, the first couple buttonholes on the dress shirt, especially if you don't wear a tie and you leave it open collar. You want this to be nice and pressed so that it doesn't kind of fold down under itself or under the weight of the jacket, for instance, and just looks like a good, nice, strong collar. So that is one side. Wasn't too bad. And then if I go back, I can start going the other direction. So here's the back of the shirt, and we'll just start going towards the side with the buttons. The same sort of thing. It takes a little bit of practice, obviously. I think I'm probably making it look easy to kind of position on the ironing board, but again, if you have a stack of 4 or 5 shirts and you're forced to do it, you got a deadline, interview, go in the office, whatever, you're going to figure out kind of a good feel and a handle for doing this. But just as before, same sort of thing. We're just going through, and now with the buttons going in between them nice and carefully. That's another reason why irons are shaped the way they are. And again, on this particular cotton, it's coming out pretty easily. And you can kind of use your hands to just guide the fabric down again, going in between. Sometimes I go from the other side real quick and just carefully go around the buttons. To again get that really important part that I mentioned, was the first several buttons of a shirt, to make sure that that's nice and well pressed. Because that's what people are going to see more than anything, especially if you're wearing a jacket or a sweater or something. So then, for the sleeves, I just grab at the top of the sleeve here, and then look for the end towards the cuff, and just lay that flat. And it's going to look like a mess, but if you start someplace, it'll start to look better in no time. Towards down by the shirt cuff, that's where I had problems in the last episode that I pointed out. That's always pretty bad. And to be honest, some things for me are okay. I'm not going to obsess over this little wrinkle, for instance. Some people do, and if you go to a cleaners, dry cleaners, they're probably going to get that out perfectly. Again, that's an example of my style where that doesn't really bother me. And then on the shirt cuff, I line up both edges and just press down the seam. Maybe give it a few seconds, and that's it. And then flip it over. I'll do the same thing, pinch and pinch. On the other side, and you can see we did a little bit of damage actually, just because when we were pressing, unlike the back and the front of the shirt where I could slip it over the ironing board here, I can't quite do that with the shirt sleeves. And so, again, my own preference, it's okay to have a few little wrinkles here and there. I don't obsess about having some of these. I don't think it's a real big deal. Otherwise, you can spend time working on it. And then the other shirt sleeve, real quick, same story. Kind of pull on the shirt cuff now and again to give a little tension so you can get in there. And we'll flip it over like the last one. Grab a couple fingers on the shirt cuff there, and then one up at the top by the shoulder. And then if you want to get the shirt cuff nice and pressed, line up those edges again. Careful of the hands, and just give it a few seconds. So, just about done. The last thing, the yoke, is the area around your shoulders. And that's something that through all this movement tends to get a little wrinkled just by the act of ironing it. So I like to focus a little bit on that section. Just using the top of the ironing board here, moving around nice and slowly, just to focus a little bit. And that is really it. So the last thing, very last thing, is the shirt collar. This is a little bit of a controversial topic, right? Everyone has a different way of doing it, and if there's one thing that gets a lot of abuse, it's the seam on the collar here. And I think what I'm about to do is even less destructive than oftentimes abrasive methods at a cleaners, unless you found a good one. And what I like to do is I like to lay it out like this, and then just carefully, not too much pressure, not too much heat, just kind of go over it once. And then you should already, shirt should want to go right back to that fold. And so I just coax it along. And just to help it one last time, remember where it needs to live, I'll just go over it a little bit, give it a little steam, and that's it. This was a button-down shirt. And I'll put the buttons down again, and that's it. So, not too bad. It's relatively straightforward to iron a dress shirt, and again, there's different techniques that you'll probably adopt to make you more efficient, or shortcuts even. You notice a couple of mine, I don't get too obsessive over the little wrinkles that don't bother me personally. You could be different, but at the very least, that's to kind of give you some guidance on how to start. If ironing is a little too intimidating for you, there's no reason to. You just gotta line up a couple shirts and make it happen. Alright guys, don't forget to subscribe. And if you have comments or questions, don't forget to reach out. We are at questions@bespokeedge.com, or make a comment below, and we'll be back on episode 31.